Hello, everyone. Okay, we are ready to get started here at BarMax. Welcome to today's webinar. I think this is number 4. We've been doing these as a series while we're all trying to be safe during this COVID-19 crisis. We've been offering this content that we are hoping will help everyone prepare for the bar exam. Today, we're talking about the performance test part of your bar exam. Today's presentation applies to the California performance test and to the multi-state performance test, and they're now very similar, for all practical purposes identical, although I will flag the small differences. So this session will be helpful to everyone taking any exam that involves a performance test, whether the MPT or the California PT. Now for the Californians, I know the last time I broadcast a webinar, people were curious to know when we would be covering the California exam. And so now we have finalized a date for that. We have a California instructor. I've passed 3 bar exams. I moved around a lot, but California is not one of them. So when you hear about the California exam, you want to hear specifically from an instructor who's passed the California exam, because as you guys know, it's its own beast, right? And it is a beast, and I do know a lot about it, but I defer to my colleagues who've actually passed it. So that webinar will be on Wednesday, May 13th at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, 2 Central. You do the math. That's going to be for you Californians, although today is pretty much for everyone who has either the MPT or the California performance test. This is our agenda for today. I like to stick to an agenda, and here's how you're going to help me do it. If you have specific questions about this stuff, you know, the specific agenda items, especially like if I'm getting, you know, if I've been through a big chunk of a section and you're still not clear on something, then go ahead and throw that into the Q&A. So I really want to keep Q&A for things about the performance test itself. I'm going to cover what it is and how it fits into the overall bar exam that you're taking. I'm going to cover what it looks like, because they hand you this big file. You may have heard this. If not, don't worry. You'll find out all about it today. And they give you this big stack of paper. So I'm going to do a little reveal and show you at least what part of it looks like. And then we're going to talk about strategies for preparing and strategies for actually, you know, completing a performance test task. So again, throw the questions specific to the MPT in Q&A, and then other questions that you have about BarMax, about the bar exam in general, you know, shout outs and kudos and anything else, general questions can go over there and chat, because we have other great people at BarMax monitoring chat today to make sure that all of your needs get met and all of your questions get answered. So I'm going to be stopping periodically and looking at the Q&A to see how I can help you with that. And then, oh yeah, so that's what I wanted to show you. What do I mean by these packages? We offer 2 comprehensive bar review packages. One is geared toward the UBE, and the other is geared specifically to the California bar exam. These are comprehensive, so they provide everything that you need to pass that particular exam, the UBE being offered in so many states. And you'll see that it's the lectures, the flashcards. We've updated some of those lately. I'm super proud of them. And you'll get all of the real practice questions, including real performance tests. There are way more than 25 now. Pretty sure that we're past that now. You'll be able to submit performance tests and other essays for review for free. I mean, it's paid for as part of your BarMax program. And then we also have, you know, all of the past essays and MPTs in a digital welcome packet, a study calendar. And when we talk about lifetime access, if you register now and, for example, you're one of these people that your state won't let you sit for the bar in September for whatever reason, you can use it next February, you can use it next summer, you don't have to plead with us. It's there. You have it. It's yours to use as long as you're using it to pass a bar exam. And then this lifetime support, we talk about here, you know, the availability on through the app and phone, but we also have some live office hours. That's not even listed here, but we've added that. We added that for the February exam, and it will continue for this exam. So kind of I'll go deeper about some of the stuff I'm talking about today in a future office hour. Anyway, so those are our comprehensive programs. If you were here last week because you're not in a UBE state or California, then you learned about whether the UBE program might be right for you, or whether you might want to just use BarMax to pass the MBE and use other products for your state portion. We talked about that last week. Anyway, so that's the discounts. They apply to that and or to tutoring, and you can buy hourly or you can buy packages. If you want a bigger package than listed here, you can go ahead and contact us and we'll tailor something to your needs. Okay. Did you hear I just dropped something? It wasn't my Apple Pencil, so I can still write. Woohoo. All right, so moving on to our agenda. First, I'm going to talk about what the performance test is, just in terms of how it fits into your overall bar exam. It's a portion of the first day of your bar exam. So if your state traditionally has a Tuesday, Wednesday bar exam, like the UBE does, then you'll Tuesday morning and you'll have to do performance test tasks, okay? And then other states also use the multi-state performance test. In fact, it's used in all states except for these. It's used in the District of Columbia. It's used in all US territories except Puerto Rico. Now, if you are taking the UBE, you get 2 tasks, okay? You have 3 hours to do 2 tasks, and we'll talk a little later about using your time, you know, getting to where you can do them in 90 minutes each, because there's really a big time management component of this part of the test. And it adds up to 40% of your written score or 20% of your overall score on the uniform bar exam in a state like New York or Illinois or Massachusetts, anything using the uniform bar exam. In California, you're given 1 California performance test task, and I think I've calculated correctly, it's less than 15% of your overall score, but it's still something that you don't want it to pull you down. You want to do well in this area, so that's why you're here today. And then in other states that use it, now some states that use the MPT publishes 2 tasks every year, and some states choose one of them and use that as part of their test. So for example, Texas uses 1. Oh, Texas is changing next year, but for this administration, Texas's bar exam will have 1 performance test task. So that's just 90 minutes. And that's worth 10% of the overall Texas bar exam score. Okay, so that is kind of where it fits. It's part of your written score. on the bar exam. And I'm going to take a few minutes here for Q&A. If anything, I'm going to skip the ones that I know I'm going to answer in the next couple of sections, because this is what we're going to talk about next, is what's in it and how to approach it. But let me see what other overall questions I can help you with. Again, Q&A should be about the MPT, and other questions should go into chat. I see you guys are using chat, so that's great. Oh boy. Problems with registration for the New York bar exam. Fred, I will answer your question about Hawaii because the answer is short. I answered it last week, but here's the answer. In Hawaii, your exam is the UBE plus a Hawaii professional responsibility component. So you're going to want to learn your Hawaii professional responsibility component, particularly your Hawaii rules of professional conduct. That's 30 minutes of multiple choice questions that you'll do when you walk in the door on Tuesday. And then the rest of your exam is identical to the UBE. So if you are in Hawaii, boop, here's your palm tree. Okay, I don't have palm trees where I live. You're going to want to take our UBE course. I hope that helps you out, Fred. The other questions, there's questions about the discount, questions about New York. Questions about where to access recorded seminars. Okay, so Mina, you probably got an email about this seminar and or webinar, and we send to that same email address. You'll see emails. They'll come typically from our founder, Mayron, right? And they have links to access the ones that are done. And all of the webinars, it kind of goes to your question too. They are available. You should see those links in an email. And if you guys can't find that email, reach out to us, make sure we have a good email address, and we'll make sure that you get those links. Okay. I had difficulty with the PT. Sometimes it's hard to understand the case. Yeah, Cassandra, that can be tough, and practice is really going to help you there, because it is a skill, right? The PT is a skill. We'll talk about that a little more later, but I understand. And so we'll just talk about how the strategies that I recommend that might help you. If the bar exam is administered online, how are we going to be getting the PT file and library on your screen? I can't imagine how this would be done online. Rima, me neither. I am not sure, and I just don't know the answer to that one. And I don't know if somebody wants to chime in chat. You might want to monitor chat and see if anybody has a better idea, but we really don't know. It's too early, I think, to say how online PTs would be administered. Maybe Mayron, or whoever our California instructor is, I'm not sure who it is 100%, but in the California webinar, maybe there'll be some thoughts about that next week. And then, yeah, so Lamont, for Texas, if you can go find the webinar I did last week and watch it. I mean, fast forward when I'm talking about other states, but watch the whole introductory part and then watch the Texas part, and you'll see that what you're getting at there is exactly what you should do. You should take our MBE course because it's great, and then learn the oil and gas and the other Texas subjects on your own. And P&P, you know, the procedure and practice part of Texas, both civil and criminal, is really important. But in Texas, the materials are online and available to practice from past exams, which is what we recommend. So go ahead and take a look at that webinar, and at your state's bar website, you'll get what you need. I have difficulty keeping track of all that info. Okay, Elvira, it might be Elvira. I have a method that I recommend that I feel like I've looked at other instructors' methods, and sometimes I feel like they're too complicated. And so mine is a little simpler. And I may not be able to get into huge detail today, but I do in the office hours. So we'll see how far we get today in the actual nitty-gritty of the method. But Elvira, juggling the facts and the rules and the information in the test is exactly, it's the challenging part. So you are right on topic with this. UBE course is tailored to the New York bar exam. There is a New York state law exam, which is an online course followed by an exam that you take it separate. But the bar exam that's going to be administered on September 9th and 10th, it's usually in July and February every year. This course is tailored to that. So the UBE is now the same in all the UBE jurisdictions. Let's see. Will this webinar be available to rewatch? Yes, I shouldn't be answering all these questions. Okay. Okay, I want to just skip to the ones about the MPT. Atiba, I usually do well on one and bomb the other. So I'm hoping our method helps you, Atiba. And also time management is usually an issue when that happens. Not always. This past administration, more people I knew had trouble with the first one. California. So yes, Rima, part of it is also in the California course. There are only a few extra topics you would need to study for, which would be family law and secure transactions. So you could pick up other materials on that, or just talk to us and see if we can help you with that somehow. I don't know exactly what we could do, but reach out to support when you want to take the Hawaii bar after taking the California bar. You are given hard copies of the MPT file during the exam. That's a great question. So yes. Can this UBE apply on the Washington State exam too? Yes, Washington State is a UBE state, right? I think so. Yeah, and all the UBE is now the same in every jurisdiction. As you know, the scores are transportable. You still have to do character and fitness, and you still have to apply to become an attorney. You still have to pay some fee, but your score is transportable, and you are expected to answer UBE questions based on general principles of law that are widely applicable. I do talk about that as well in the MEE webinar that I did week before last or last week. They're blurring now. I think I did 2 last week. So, or maybe it was this, I don't know. The days do blur. But it's been great. It's been great doing these. I hope I'm helping a lot of people. Anyway, so let's do it. Let's move forward so I can help more people. We're going to talk about what's in that PT file and library. And someone asked, do you get a printout of it? Yes, you do. You get a printout of it. I'm going to show you just kind of a few pages of what it looks like for that MPT, and then what it looks like for California. I'm actually just going to highlight a few pages here, but you get this. This is an MPT cover sheet. And now obviously it doesn't come with the point sheets. This is what's on our website. That's for the graders, right? You get a cover sheet that looks like, actually it looks like this. Okay, you'll have a file, and then the library will also have a cover sheet, but instead of file, it will say library. And we'll talk about what those 2 components are and how to use them, but basically the file contains your facts and your assignment, and the library contains your law, and yeah, basically contains all the law that you'll need to know. Now that's important to know, that on the performance test, both California and multi-state, you're not expected to know any particular rules of law. You are expected to know how law works. You are expected to know how precedents operate and which ones are, controlling. And even when you have 2 cases, if they have a different rule, which one is controlling, you have to know how to do that kind of analysis. But you, yeah, you don't need to know any particular California law or any particular other law to take these tests. Okay. After this, there'll be an instruction page. I didn't put it up here. Go read it at your leisure, okay? Go read one at your leisure. Don't read it the day of the exam. Don't waste time reading the instruction page, just the general, here's what a performance test is, instructions that are given by NCBE to the examinees every time. You don't have time to read it the day of the exam. So you're going to skip it on the day of the exam and go straight to your file. All right. And then the first thing in your file, right, is a memo. Okay, this is the most important document that you have. Let's give it a big old star. This is the most important document you have. It's your task memo or your task memorandum. It's the assignment that you are being asked to complete. So again, depending on how much time we have, we are going to walk through kind of how to read this and what we want to get out of it. But that's what it looks like. And then sometimes there's a second memorandum that explains the format or style that you're expected to use for that task. And boy, oh boy, you are counted on your ability to follow instructions. So this is also a very important document. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they just want you to write a memo about you know, for a law firm, and you learned how to do that your first year of law school, so they might not give you guidance. Or they might say draft a letter to a client, and you are supposed to understand from general knowledge what a letter looks like. You know, a letter has your law firm address here, you know, law firm name, 123 Main Street, you know, whatever, something, you know, they'll give you a town. On the MPT, you're in Franklin, which is an imaginary state. And there you go. You give your firm address. You give the address of the person you're writing to, the date, you know, the date you're taking the exam. And then, you know, dear Mr. So-and-so, or dear Miss So-and-so, or dear Dr. Smith, or whatever it is, right? And then you begin to write, and the tone and style of your letter is going to depend on who you're writing to, okay? How do you know who you're writing to? Your instructions tell you. All right, so all of these things, the memorandum, and any style memo, that second page. So for a letter, they might not give you a style memo. You might not get one at all. But for this, because you're being asked to draft a bench memo to a judge, that means you're a law clerk. That's a nice job to have. You're a law clerk, and the judge has asked you for some information so that before, let's see, this is Leonard's hand. So before he walks into court, he can have the full information that he needs about this case without going through the file in the letter, in the level of detail that you will, okay? So, and this tells you what a bench memorandum should look like. Why did I put a big yellow box here? Is because if you are given an instruction like a style guide memo, a second memo in the file, you need to follow this religiously. Even if you know the law and understand what's going on in the case, if you don't follow this, you're going to lose a lot of points, okay? You're being judged on your ability to manage your time, to analyze the law, all of that, get it done, but they also want to see that you can follow instructions, okay? So that's important, that second page. Now, and that can happen in California too. Okay, now what I do, and again, we'll spend more time on this sheet. I take a piece of paper. This is what I recommend for my students. You take a piece of your scrap paper and you write task, outline, law. You leave some white space after outline and law, just like we've done here. And after you read that bench memo, you're going to at least, or after you read your task memo, you're going to at least write you know, your boss is a judge, okay? So that is at least what you're going to write for task. You may, from the memo, also be able to at least do your outline, because you may have a partner who said, I want you to respond to these 2 arguments, and stated them, or I want you to research these 2 issues. Well, then you know, here's section 1, here's section 2. Other times you don't know till you look at the law what your outline is. Don't worry about it then. But at least after you read the task memo, you've got some general idea what you're supposed to do. Let's look at a California one too, shall we? We're going to see how similar it is. Okay. They use a different font, and they tend to double space more, where MPT tends to single space more. Are these important differences? No. Okay. You have the same 90 minutes to complete this task that you would to complete an MPT. Here's one difference. In California, you're not in California, because they don't want you sticking California law in there. They're making their own little universe with the law that they're making up for the test. So you're in an imaginary state of Columbia. So our MPT friends are in an imaginary state of Franklin, and you California folk are in an imaginary state of Columbia. That's one of the differences, okay? Columbia and Franklin are both in the imaginary, fictional 15th Circuit of the US courts, right? So if you have federal law in there and it references cases, the 15th Circuit cases are binding on you. The other ones are just, you could compare, you could say, gee, are we gonna follow the 5th Circuit's rule here? Are we gonna follow another state's rule here? In Franklin, you MPT folks might actually see a case from Columbia they use that fake name there too. Well, that's a sister state. It's a persuasive authority, but not necessarily a binding one. So recognizing, you know, how these things fit together is part of the skill that you're being asked to display on this test. Okay, so here's a task memorandum. Look, the task memorandum goes to 2 pages. Well, that's because it's double spaced. So it's about the same length as the other one. Sometimes they're a little longer, sometimes they're a little shorter. And this one did not have a second memo after it. Okay, so here was your job. You were to prepare an objective memorandum. Okay, so both of these require an objective memorandum. The 2 main types of tasks that you might be asked to do are a memorandum, like these 2, or a brief. And when they want you to do a brief, they never want you to write the whole brief. They never want you to write the facts section. I've never seen it, and I doubt I ever will, right? What they want is the argument section, okay? And they specify that in the instructions. They say, just write the argument section, or just write this section of the argument. Okay, so you'll be jumping into writing just the legal nitty-gritty, because they want to see that you can apply the law to the facts and in a persuasive way. Now there is a third kind of thing, and we just call them the wild cards. And again, I did an office hour where one of the topics I dealt with was dealing with the wild cards. I'll talk to you about preparing for those. But gosh, what were some of the things they've had to do? Draft a legislative handout, like to persuade lawmakers of, you know, the position of our group. That's illegal writing, right? Because you're a lawyer writing a, you know, who's proposing a piece of legislation, and you're explaining to the lawmakers why it's needed. That's legal writing, but it's a different kind of legal writing. Revise this contract. Prepare a statement for the mediator. Oh, that one had detailed instructions, and if you just wrote a brief, you did not follow them. Okay, so we'll talk about how to prepare for those wildcard tasks. You want to practice with a lot of memos and briefs, but we'll also talk about how to prepare for those wildcard tasks. Okay, So that's what we're getting into next, is our preparation strategies. Again, if you have general questions about the bar exam and about BarMax, put those in chat, because I can't answer all of those live, but I will try to answer performance test questions on the Q&A. So again, there's some stuff in here in Q&A just regarding that's not about the PT. So go and add it to chat instead. I find it difficult to finish the PT within the allotted time. How can you help? So Evelyn will talk about strategies for preparation and strategies for approaching the task. And when you practice approaching the task in a very organized way that is not overly extensive or burdensome on you, you should be able to pick up your pace. Can we mark up, highlight, write on the hard copies? Yes, and I do. I recommend in any piece of paper they give you, scribbling like a mad woman or madman. Who was that? Okay, so I do recommend that, anonymous. Okay. How should you approach the PT if you get a longer file versus a shorter one? Ooh, Mary, that's a really interesting question. I should save it for later, but I haven't got it in my script. So I'm going to say, if you see a shorter file, you want to be looking for some detail. I'm thinking of one where on the breathalyzer report, okay, this was a drunk driving case, the wrong person's signature appeared. One person had signed for the analyst, okay? An assistant had signed on behalf of the analyst. Well, if you looked over at the statute, the statute required that an analyst sign the report. And there were some funky things about the date of the report too. So this breathalyzer report was no longer like presumptively correct before the law, but it was very easy to miss if you just picked it up and said, okay, I recognize this, it's a breathalyzer report or a blood test, it wasn't the breathalyzer, whatever. It showed the person's blood alcohol level to be at a certain level that was illegal, but you're the defense. So you needed to look at the date, you needed to look at the signatures, you needed to look at this in more detail than just, okay, overall, what is it and what's the main point? Okay, so when you have a short file and when you have oddball documents, I can think of another one where it was a newspaper article and the date of the newspaper article mattered because it indicated that somebody had prior knowledge of something. I mean, that's, you know, so how to approach a shorter file, or you know, when you don't have all these long depositions and stuff, when you just have a few little documents in there, pick at them. Pick at those documents. Poke at them, find their flaws. Okay, Mary? Foreign lawyers haven't studied in the US about how to write a memorandum. Let's talk about that. Let me just make sure that when I get to the part about this preparation that I deal with my foreign lawyers question. And I know there's a way to save it on the screen, but that's an excellent question. And we have had, you know, plenty of foreign lawyers who've been successful with BarMax. I have one of my tutoring students just, you know, was successful, and starting with another tutoring student who's also a foreign lawyer. So, but we'll talk about just practice. I mean, the short answer is going to be practice, but let's think about specific strategies. Oh yeah, in a letter you would want to write Ray in a subject header. That's a good idea. Yes, so that is the same style. Sorry, I left that out. It's not crucial, but it's normal to do so in a business type letter. Yes. So thank you for catching me on that, Tanessa. Hadn't prepared that example, did it off my head. Is there a general format for letters if we're not given an additional memo? Oh, wait, hang on. It's been a while since I've written a letter. So I would say, yeah, you know, the general format for letters, you know, is like I said, it's just, you know, your firm's address here, the other party's address here, you know, usually a Ray. Tanessa was right. So Ray meaning this is about, you know, case, you know, Smith v. Jones, whatever. Okay. And then your date, and then dear. And when it says, you know, when the partner says prepare for my signature, that means that you write the partner's name at the bottom. You don't write examinee at the bottom. Okay. When you're doing a memo, it's obviously to, from, date, Ray, or wait, Ray, date, hang on. Now I'm talking too fast. Anyway, it's what they give you in the file. And, you know, and then you indent and you write your stuff here. When you write that, the from is you, and you can't write your name because, hello, you're being anonymous on the test. So what you should write is examinee. You could write associate, you could write law clerk, but, you know, don't waste brain power on it. Just write examinee, everybody's examinee. Okay. So that's that. Is this presentation something we can download? I don't know that it's downloadable, but it's certainly streamable so that you can watch it later. Any tips for handwriting? Don't. But yeah, so my first tip, and Ken, is don't, and my second tip is don't, but then I will give you my other tips because I did indeed have to handwrite. They had ExamSoft by then, but I didn't trust it, and I didn't, you know, it was just back in the days you didn't have all the laptops and all that. So when I took the Texas bar exam, I did have to handwrite my PT. But of course, many more people wrote then. So they were much more patient. So I will talk about that when I'm talking about approaches, okay? It's Tanessa, it's written via laptop. If the whole exam, the written essay portions of the exam can be done on ExamSoft. You do that by registering through your bar. Like after you register for the bar exam, they'll tell you the date. There's usually a window, a couple weeks, when you register for ExamSoft. It costs another $100 usually. And that gets you, you know, registered to use the special licensed software that blocks every other website so that all you can see during the exam is the exam. And then when you leave the exam, you have to upload that file. Like you can't just go and, you know, drink yourself into oblivion, which is a bad idea anyway. Okay, a lot of lawyers have, you know, need to bring that in. But so yeah, anyway, but what I'm saying is if you do choose to drink yourself into oblivion, make sure you upload your exam answers first. Okay, so that was probably more than you needed, Tanessa, but yes, it's typically done by a laptop, and I will talk about tips for handwriting in a minute, Ken, when I'm talking about writing. In the past, okay, I think it is now compatible with Macs and you know, PC computers. I don't know that it's compatible with iPads and iPhones. So you're Mario, to check about ExamSoft, I would say to contact your jurisdiction. They should know, the people who administer the bar exam in your jurisdiction. Hi, Celeste. Hi, Christina. How much time should I allocate? Okay, we'll be talking about that. To review outline short file versus long file. I pretty much think the rule of thumb is, you know, 45 minutes to outline, 45 minutes to write. That's kind of the way I do it. I don't go analyzing what am I looking at, you know, just in the day of the test, you know, you want to have it down to a routine. That's what I recommend. So should you start with, Jay, I think that could go either way. Let me think about that one, Jay. I'm going to leave it up here. Is writing a better option if you're not a fast typist or typer? No. Benarani, I think I may have slaughtered your name. If I have, I apologize, but it's better to type. Most people handwrite. If you're going to handwrite neatly, you're only handwriting about 30 words a minute anyway. And so if you type slowly, you probably type at least that. And the readability is so much higher. And also you can practice your typing. You have some months between now and the bar exam. In the moments that your brain is not studying for the bar, you can, depending on when you're taking it, you can do online typing tutorials. It's actually what I recommend for people who want to take the bar exam and are kind of crummy typists, to just find a typing program and learn to touch type. It's harder to learn these kind of skills as an adult. I get it. I taught myself to touch type when I was 9. I'm like a nerd. My grandfather wrote me typewritten letters, so I dragged my mother's typewriter into my room because I felt like they looked so much better. So I had to, and then my sister had, anyway, I taught myself to touch type like when I was 9. And it's a lot harder when you're an adult, but it's still doable. And they have those courses online to help you with that. Okay. So some of you have asked good questions. So Barbara, New York bar exam, you should look at the New York BOLE website because it's constantly being updated and it's super important for you to keep track of it. But right now, from May 5th to 15th is the registration period for first-time takers who have graduated from a New York law school. If you want to register for the next bar exam, which is September 9th and 10th, you've got to do it between now and like 11:59 p.m. on May 15th. If you are not in that category, first time taker, graduating from a law school somewhere in the state of New York, an ABA law school somewhere in the state of New York, if you're not in that category, unfortunately, they don't have a registration period open for you yet. They will announce after May 15th. Again, I'm supposed to stay on target. You guys ask me MPT questions, okay? Because look at me, I want to help everybody. Sophia, all you need to prepare for the California bar is our California bar prep course. If it looks like, gee, this costs a lot less than other bar prep courses, does it have everything I need? Yes, it does. It has everything you need. We've always been online. We've always been, a safely socially distant program. And we have it for you, everything you need in that comprehensive package to pass the California bar. All right, so let's get to it. How should I go about preparing if I, haven't done this before, or if I did it and it was just like I did it on the fly and that was definitely not the way I should have done it? First of all, you want to get familiar with the tasks. You want to look out, like what we looked at today, some briefs and memos. Let me see. So I think I have more in my notes, but while you are, here it is, yes. So you want to start reading and outlining. And what I mean is you just take it, and I'll walk through the process a little step by step, but you just take it through the outline step. You should be able to get that done in 45 minutes eventually, but take all the time you need to an hour while you're familiarizing yourself with these files, what they look like, how much should be in your outline. Okay, so that just outlining a couple, just to familiarize yourself, maybe one brief and one memo, something like that. I wrote outline. Okay, let's not do any lines. Maybe outline. Okay, when you just do that a couple of times, maybe one each, just to familiarize yourself. Okay, then instead of writing the task, you can just go and look at the point sheet. These are provided with the point sheet. Okay, and you can, and any available model answer for some of the more recent years, there are model answers available, meaning the way the examinee did it on the day of the test. Well, it's not necessarily perfect, but it scored a high score. So even if something about it doesn't match the perfect ideal, the analysis was strong enough that they felt like that was the one they wanted to use as a sample. New York does it, Minnesota does it. Now, again, if you're taking a BarMax UBE program or the BarMax California program, you have access to all of these past MPTs. I think it was in chat, 70-something MPTs and point sheets. Now, the point sheets are the information given to the examiners about what examinees were supposed to get out of it. Okay, the first few pages will be a summary of what you just did and read. And then there are several pages that discuss in detail what an answer should look like, what an examinee should have caught. So outline it, then read the point sheet and see, did I get most of that? Now, I want you to notice, sometimes it'll be like, oh, give 45% for this and 45% for this. And then, oh, here's some arcane little point that some people got. Okay. Oh, wait, I don't even think they do percentages. No, I don't think they do it with percentages. They may or may not, now I can't remember, have percentages. But the point is, sometimes there's a little point at the end, and it's like some examinees may notice. So a great MPT answer may not have everything in the point sheet, okay? But it should have most of it. You shouldn't have missed any big glaring points. And if you did, go back and figure out what it was in your reading. Maybe you went too fast. Maybe you did all that outlining in 30 minutes instead of giving yourself 40. Okay, you should be taking 40 minutes. Even if you're fast, you want to take more than 30, okay? And if you're slow or need more time to process, for that first step, these are phases, okay? We're in this phase right now. For here, take an hour, take the time you need. Then go ahead and actually do an entire task. Read and outline, then write. And again, if it takes you 2 hours instead of just the hour and a half, you have my permission. If you're doing it in an hour, you're rushing, you know, probably need to be expanding a little more. So you want it to be, you know, around an hour and a half. But if it takes you a little more time, don't worry about it. This is your practice. Now, at this point that you've practiced, you could do one of two things. You can review your point sheet again, or you can submit what you have written for review to the BarMax graders. Okay. If you're, and we will go ahead and, you know, someone will go ahead and give you a critique of your writing and a score. You know, BarMax has a scale of 1 to 10. We say 5 is passing. Every state uses a different scale for grading essays, but you want to see if you're getting that 5 or above, that would look like passing. If you're getting something a little higher, or if you need improvement, there'll be some comments to tell you where you can improve next time. Okay. So you're going to practice. Step 1, you're going to familiarize yourself with at least a brief and a memo. And then you're going to practice one that's either a brief or a memo untimed. And then you're going to start practicing some timed. You're going to set a timer or put a clock where you can see it. Someone asked me earlier, what do I do if I'm running out of time? You want to take the tasks that you do and even break them down further to say, here's how much time I have to take notes, and then I have to write an actual honest to goodness outline in this amount of time. And write your outline and be done with it by 45 minutes. And even if it's not perfect, start writing. Start writing. People who don't tend to run behind on time, If you give yourself a little more, a little less, that's fine. But if you're running behind on time, you give yourself that 45-minute cutoff and you're going to start writing. If you want to go digging around for more points later, great. If you have time after you have written the whole thing to a conclusion, and then you can do that, but you probably won't. There really is time pressure on this test. Look, no great lawyer would try to do a task like this in 90 minutes. It's unrealistic. So you wouldn't do your best work. Maybe some people would. Some people work great under time pressure, who knows? But a lot of lawyers are very careful and methodical people who produce great work and are great lawyers. And you might be one of them. Unfortunately, this test is going to force you to go a little faster than you're comfortable just to get past this test. Okay. Get this, by practicing, you can develop this habit and then chuck it out the window after you get your notification that you've passed the bar exam. And you can go back to being somewhat methodical and careful, although you don't want to be too slow because then you don't take care of your clients. There's a balance. There's a balance. I'm a careful writer myself. So I was able to blow through the MPTs, but when it comes to get through them in a reasonable amount of time. But when it comes to real life assignments, I can also just want to take every word and whatever. No, you just keep going. You got that 45 minutes. And if you are even breaking down the task further, if you've got section 1 and section 2, you just say, I got 20 minutes. If I'm still writing about section 1 at the end of 20 minutes, I'm moving on to section 2. I'm just going to write a sentence that concludes it, even if I'm in the middle of a paragraph, and maybe I'll have time to come back later, but you force yourself to keep moving. So this is where you're practicing timed. And this is especially important for my friend who mentioned timing as a problem. And again, you can submit some of these for review, or you can review them yourself with the point sheet. Now you understand every single time you're either reviewing the point sheet or submitting for review or both. Okay. All right. For those of you who, for whatever reason, don't purchase BarMax, I'm going to let you know that there are some performance tests available for free. You can go look at them now, like if you can't buy BarMax today, on the NCBE website. And they have a few years. Okay. California has all the way back to 2012. Don't use them. I don't know why they use anything before July 2017. They shouldn't. It's insane. Because they changed the entire format of the exam in California in 2017. So if you go to the California Bar website and you start downloading old performance tests, you're going to be looking at, I think they were 3-hour tasks, totally different ball of wax. How should you prepare for California if you only have from July 2017 forward? Well, obviously, you should use those. But then you can also use multi-state performance tests to prepare, because now they are all the same length and about the same complexity. The two exams are now very similar. So rather than use any California exam from 2012, 13, 14, all the way up through February of 2017, you don't want to use those, California. I don't know why they still have them on the website, okay? The July 2017 cutoff only applies to the California. MPT has always been a 90-minute test, but California changed its tune in July 2017. Okay. Anyway, so that's all this practice. Then the last step, as you start approaching your exam, you're pretty comfortable. I want you to start familiarizing yourself with what I was calling the wild card tasks, the writing, the legislative handout, or just various legal documents that are not briefs or memos that they want you to be able to prepare. The way you familiarize yourself with those is you read the task memo, you know, let's say we're getting toward the exam and you're saying, holy cow, I'm using this time to memorize a whole lot of black letter law. I don't have much time to spend on the performance test anymore. Then just read the task memo and maybe skim the materials. Okay, I have a deposition, I have 4 cases, you know, whatever, right? Skim the materials and then read, and then get to the nitty-gritty of the point sheet where it says what they wanted them to do, and or look at model sample answers. Now, for model sample answers, examinee answers, we only have the past few years. We don't go back as far as the questions themselves. So some of the questions we only have the point sheet, but for many questions, we also have sample examinee answers. And again, you can get them all through BarMax. They're part of your welcome packet. It downloads in one zip file. They're right there on your computer where you can access them and use them quickly. If you want to go scurrying around the internet, yes, Minnesota has some good ones, and New York has some good ones. A couple other states have posted, but those are easy to get to, and you know, pretty good examples. Yeah. So I say read the task memo and then look at the materials that you have to figure out what did they want. You know, when I read the task memo and any, you know, the second memo that goes with it with the instructions, is this what I would have done? What would I have done to answer this? Oh, it was like that. They will not have the same wildcard task again. It is very unlikely that they'll ask you to draft a mediation statement with the same format as the toy store one from a few years ago. Okay, they just won't ask that exact same thing. But when you read the instructions for that and you read the point sheet or a sample answer, you'll say, oh, okay, this is how they wanted someone to follow the instructions. So I want to be ready to follow whatever weirdo instructions they might give me. Okay. So I'm going to go through like more of a detailed approach to actually doing one. We won't go into, we won't go into the whole, I'm not going to do it in great detail, but I'm going to talk us through it. I will walk through a file with students during office hours going forward at some point in the future. But for now I want to take a little Q&A. Again, questions about the MPT should go in Q&A, and all your other questions or questions that you want answered more quickly should go in chat. I don't know, I think they're quick. So let me see. Does California have sample point sheets? Oh, Rima, that's a really good question. I've been talking about these point sheets like they're available to everyone, and I was trying to be good about being inclusive of both kind. California posts only model student answers, okay? California only posts like sample answers from examinees who scored well. So you can look at those as models for the way that a student approached it and got a lot of points, okay? I could pull a sample point sheet, Atiba. I might pull one if we have a few minutes later. Practice tests for those not in California. If you go to the NCBE website, you know, the people who put on the bar exam, they have a few years there, okay, when under a link called Preparing for the MPT. Now, in terms of my slow typists and my handwriters, someone asked which I recommend. I definitely recommend typing. And oh, in terms of outlining, I prefer to outline by hand because I think by hand a little more, and my outlines are not pretty. My outlines are one statute of limitations. I write it just like that. What does that say? That says statute of limitations. I don't know what you think it says. And then two, you know, whatever the second argument is. Okay, I write a word and then I write the key facts and cases here. My outline is so, well, it might be a little neater than that, but it's not very neat. It doesn't have any complete sentences. It's words to remind me what I'm covering in each paragraph. And that's it, you know? So like there was one that was a tort case. It was literally, oh my gosh, it was so funny. The woman hurt her nose, her arm, and something else, I don't know, ankle, no, it was nose, ankle, arm. That was like the literal order, ankle, arm, in 3 separate incidents, you know, stemming from this haunted house. Okay, this one's crazy. It's called Monroe, and I don't know what year it is. I think, I don't know. July 2012, maybe. I don't know. I've done a lot of them. Anyway, so yeah, I would do my outline just like according to the woman's claims, and I would, you know, talk about why we're not liable, we were the defendant, and I would use the case law and say why it's not like that case, you know, or why it is like that case in just little bullets for myself before I start writing. So my outline is very bare bones, and I'll go through this a little more in an office hour, but an outline is a very bare bones ordeal. So I like to do it by hand. Some people prefer to type because they kind of set those down as their headers. I don't think there's anything wrong with putting all your headers first, like, and then going back and filling in, you know, just in terms of nose, arm, and nose, ankle, arm. Writing headers for a brief where like they want you to write like a detailed, nice sentence header. Often they ask for that in the format. They want you to write, you know, Franklin Flags Amusement Park is not liable because blah, blah, you know, they want you to write a whole sentence that links law and facts. Often it helps to write the paragraph first and then go write the header. Once you've fleshed out your argument, then you write the header. But that's not really outlining, that's actual writing. So some people find it helpful to type their outline. You can try it both ways, but I would say go ahead and I handwrite the outline. Okay, how many untimed tests do you recommend we complete before moving on to timed tests? Anonymous, you know, at least 2. Well, no, wait, untimed before going on to timed. Oh, 3, 4. But if it takes you longer to get comfortable, to feel like you're good at it, that you're submitting them, you like the score you're getting, then it might be more for some people. It might just be 2 for some people, right? Because how some people catch on to this kind of stuff right away. This is a strength for some people, but other examinees, this is a hurdle to get through. So it really depends on what you need. Okay, do I have an example of a point sheet? I want to try to pull something. I didn't put it in my PDF and I should have. So I answered that one. So in terms of my slow typists, again, if you're, so formatting when you write, we're not really up to this yet, but formatting when you write is so important. And this is true on your MEE essays and on your MPT or California Performance Test or your California essay. Anytime you're writing for the bar exam, your format is so important. It's important you have a header that tells us, you know, where we're going. It's important that you have paragraph breaks for each, you know, little, I did that all backwards. I know how to write. I do know how to write. For each little issue and sub issue, and, you know, that you even component, even if you have a rule statement and then your application and then your conclusion, Why separate paragraphs? Why white space between the paragraphs? To make it easy for your reader to find out what's in there, to make it easy for your reader to find the parts that will get you points. Okay. You want to use subheaders if needed. So all of that is for formatting. It applies to everyone, whether you're handwriting or typing, or a slow typist or a fast typist. What a handwriter or a slow typist will have to do differently is be very succinct in your writing. You need to kind of think through your sentences and get them out succinctly. You don't want to spend extra time because you don't have extra time. So you want to work on being succinct, just, getting to the point of what you need to get to. Again, work on your typing speed. Do some work with your typing between now and the exam. If you are going to handwrite anything, and again, Ken, my first recommendation was don't. Make sure you leave white space at the margin. Don't write all the way to here, okay? Leave white space at the margin and skip a line. Ooh, that's not even enough white space. Let's undo that one. Okay, leave white space at the margins and skip lines between your paragraphs. Underline your headers so that it's very clear, what's where, even though it's going to take up a lot of paper. Don't skip lines between lines, but skip lines between paragraphs, if that makes sense. And again, organized. If you type slowly or handwrite, you even need to spend more time organizing ahead of time so that you know exactly what's going to go where and you can say it succinctly. Okay, don't go rushing into writing. People who go rushing into writing while they're typing and type fast have the luxury of going, oh my gosh, that doesn't belong there. Let me move it over here. Or, oh crud, that's not what the facts say, right? If you type slowly or you're handwriting, you just don't have that example. And yes, Rima, in the California BarMax package, you get MPTs. We are including that because we recognize that they are helpful to you. You're asking very good questions. I'm loving this. Are the relevant cases and rules usually at the end of the material given in? Okay, so yes, I didn't even talk about how it's all laid out because we haven't gotten there yet. So we're going to go there in a minute, Evelyn, exactly where you're going to find all your information. I think we do have scratch papers during your writing day with SARTA, if they haven't changed anything because I did do ExamSoft for when I took Illinois. So yeah, scratch paper. Is the outline part of the actual answer? Oh, it's a personal outline, Estefania, a personal outline that you use to help you write the actual task to keep yourself on track and organized. It's just your notes, okay? It's just your notes. I've had a couple people ask, what do I mean by outline? I just mean jot, the major things you're gonna write about in the order you're gonna write about them, and put keywords to remind yourself of the cases or law or facts that you're gonna throw in that section. Okay. Facts. Typing seems to be key to getting a good score. Atiba, I really do think you're kind of right that it disadvantages people who are handwriting. I think it does. Like, people shouldn't, but their eyes get tired. They don't want to be reading it. It's almost impossible to keep pretty penmanship writing for a 6-hour day. If you take the UBE, you're writing for 6 hours. In California, you're writing for 6.5, right? And you get a break for lunch, but it's tough to keep your writing neat. So we really do recommend typing. Okay, let's talk about how we approach the actual test. Now, we've already talked about looking at the memo and noting the task and possibly structuring the outline. And what do I mean about structuring the outline? I mean, if the task tells you the two legal issues are 1 and 2, okay, so let's say we have, I'm sorry, you guys can't see that, but it's making me crazy. I had a hair on my iPad screen, sorry. Who in this house sheds long red hair? Okay, sorry, let's get back to work. Somebody's gonna have to edit that part out. All right, so let's say the task is a brief, and let's say that the brief tells us what the two legal issues that we're supposed to argue are, or it tells us you're responding to your opponent, and your opponent made these two legal arguments. If the task memo tells you that right at the task memo, you already have the first level of your outline done because it has given you issue 1 and issue 2. Now, you may have to have sub-issues. It may be that you have to consider 2 different body or rules of law to answer issue 2. You'll figure that out later, but at least even from reading the task memo, you might be able to start to structure your answer. Or maybe not. If we go back to those task memos I showed you earlier, neither one of them was much help. We would have to wait till we read the law to know how we're going to structure our answer. Which brings me to the next thing you do. Read the library. This is important. It means you're not reading the file in order because the file gives you the task memo and then your evidence. Things like that DUI report I told you about earlier, or a deposition transcript, or a private investigator's report, or a memo to the file that another attorney wrote after interviewing the client. Okay, all of that is evidence, it's facts, it's interesting stuff. I don't want you to read it next. I want you to read it down here. I want you to skip ahead to the page that says library and start noting all of the law that's relevant to answering the question. Okay, so the way you're going to do that is sometimes it's cases. Cases is pretty easy. You're just going to write, you know, the name of the case. You know, the first case is Costello, and you don't have to write details there, but you can say, you know, and this comes from an actual, this is that one about the amusement park. I have it stuck in my head now. You can say, you know, defendant liable because bench. That means nothing to you right now, but you will have read Costello or read about Costello, and you'll remember why that matters. And then, you know, another one, you know, defendant not liable, you know, because plaintiff knew of risk. Okay, like this is how much detail there is when you talk about the law. It's to remind yourself which case is which and what was the outcome. Okay, this is not a nice complete sentence, it's quick notes. Okay, and I wrote plaintiff and defendant like this. You may write P and D. Like, you have your own way of doing notes that I hope worked for you in law school. If not, you can start now, just, you know, P and D, or plaintiff and defendant, whatever it is, to just kind of let you quickly jot some notes. Now, you'll have more room than I have here because this is a slide. What you'll have is a normal piece of paper, and you're going to write your task at the top, you know, and that's going to include your tone and your audience. You're going to write your law. You're going to write your outline right in the middle. Okay. Your outline, actually, it's a little above the middle if you want to leave yourself enough room. And then you're going to leave yourself some room down here for the law. Yeah, and so here you're going to start listing your law. Now let me give you a tip about cases. As a good lawyer, when you are practicing law, you will never cite a case without going to look at it and seeing, you know, like, especially you're not going to cite it for major propositions and key facts unless you go and read it and see that it really says what you think it says. On the MPT, you have to ignore the good skills of lawyering. Same on the California bar exam. If you get a case and in that case, it talks about another case. So you're reading the Smith case and it's giving you the facts of Smith and it's giving you, you know, potential rules it might follow. And then it says, you know, over here in Costello, it gives you a bunch of facts. It gives you a bunch of information about Costello and the outcome. And then it's going to say, well, this case is distinguished from Costello. Or this case, you know, we're going to apply the Costello rule here. So if Smith uses Costello, you're reading Smith and you understand how Smith is using Costello, right? I'm saying how your lead case, the case that you're actually reading, how it's using a precedent, right? But you wouldn't know this unless I told you. You're supposed to use Costello too. That's right. You are supposed to use the precedent case in your analysis as if you read it yourself. If they give you a precedent case, either they're going to give you a main rule quoted from it, then when you cite that rule, you can cite that case. Or in a case like this one, where they give you facts and analysis and application, you know, and it might especially be distinguished, then you are going to use both cases in your analysis. And you're going to determine, is my case more like Smith? Is it more like Costello? Or which one am I arguing that it's like for my client? It's a brief, you know. You are going to use all the cases, even the ones just referenced in another case. The law might also include statutes or regulations. It might include local ordinances, administrative rulings. Okay, those things will be in the library because they count as law. So you're going to take quick notes about what's where. You can mark them up as well, but mostly I want you to kind of take quick notes about what's where. Now, how do you cite cases? Just cite by name, court year. Can you guys see that? It's kind of small and like, anyway, it's name, court, year. And then from then on, you just use the short name. Okay, so for example, if it's Smith v. Jones, and it was Columbia Supreme Court, you'll write Columbia Supreme Court and whatever year they said it was. Okay, and then the next time you cite it, you can just say Smith, and for the rest of your discussion, just say Smith, 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 okay? Always either underline or italicize the name of the case that you're citing. So that's how you're gonna take notes on the law. So first you read your task memo, figured out what was asked of you. And maybe you would have to read the instruction memo too. Although you might have just kind of looked at it to say, okay, I have an instruction memo and I know I need to read it in detail before I start writing. Okay, you want to note if there are instructions. So I actually kind of consider that. Was I given instructions as something that you're going to want to note on your note sheet? This, you know, this page here represents our note sheet. You're gonna, after you read the library and you note all the law, only then do you go back and read the rest of the file. Why? Because now you know what the law is. And when you know the law, it's much easier to spot which facts are relevant. You go, ah, okay, this fact is reminding me of that case I just read. And that's where you take your notes. You take your notes on the facts. You write, which case is it like, or, what does it remind me of? And you might start, being able to put together your outline, even as you're reading the facts. But when you get through with the facts, this is when you really want to write that. What I'm calling an outline, I know we call our whole course materials an outline. We call this thing an outline. So it's fair. I could just call it a little roadmap is another thing to call it, a little, almost like a diagram that you draw for yourself, showing what you're going to write about and where. Now you should know where the cases and the facts fit together, how to answer the legal questions that are raised. What do we do if, I'm going to go back to the question here. If we have a test like, it's really both of them, but let's say this one here. Okay. In particular, Soper's motion seeks to include on both evidentiary and constitutional grounds and a transcript. Okay, so here we are where this is the one where the law clerk for the judge. So our judge needs to determine whether to grant a motion to exclude a transcript of a 911 call. Okay. So we know that there's going to be some evidence law and some constitutional law that we're going to have to consider. Maybe this is a confrontation clause thing. It actually is. So this is a really good one to practice because it's actually very relevant to the substantive part of the bar exam, to the criminal law and procedure part and the evidence part. It really is. Some of them have to do with nothing that you know. There was an Indian Child Welfare Act case in a performance test. A real big up for our South Dakota friends who need to know the Indian Child Welfare Act for the South Dakota portion of their exam, but might be unfamiliar to the rest of us. There was one that was about, service of process on a foreign defendant under the Hague Convention. How are you supposed to know that? You're not. You read the file and you learn everything you can from the cases and statutes and the Hague Convention. That was basically a section from an international treaty or an international convention that you needed to consider as a source. So yeah, they've asked about all this kind of stuff. So this one happens to be about an area you're familiar with. The amusement park one happens to be about negligence and tort. So sometimes they'll throw you a familiar topic and sometimes it'll be a totally unfamiliar topic. So you need to just, work with the law you're given either way. Anyway, this one, we know there's going to be an evidence argument and a constitutional argument. But if you've studied evidence law, you know that there might be more than one evidence argument. So you need to be prepared to possibly make subsections. So we already know that our outline has, the Soper, he's the defendant, Soper's evidentiary argument or arguments, and Soper's constitutional argument or arguments. We know that that's going to be our overall outline, and we may need a sub-outline as well. How are we going to know that? We're going to know that when we read the rules and when we read the evidence. Okay, analyze the evidentiary issues first, and then analyze the constitutional issues. Wow, Judge Sand even let you know what order he wants you to do the discussion in. Okay. And remember, you got to follow the instructions and what a bench memo should look like. Ooh. Wow, that was exciting. Sorry about that. We're going to go back to where we were. This is what happens when I use OneNote. I can get everybody a little dizzy. I lost where we were. It's somehow I hit something that threw me to the top. That was new. Anyway, here we are back in Franklin v. Soper. So you've read first you read your task memo, and you looked and you noted, okay, I have some specific instructions about how to prepare a bench memo, and this is what I'm going to follow. So you note that you're going to follow that. And then you jump ahead and read the law part of the file. And then you'll come back and read all the facts and all the evidence, everything else in the file. You'll start outlining your arguments, and you'll review how it should be written. And then you write. Okay, let me go down. So then you write. And again, when you're taking the actual test, you want to be aiming for 45 minutes of writing and 45 minutes of reading and outlining, and 45 minutes of writing. If you're struggling with timing, then you have to set a timer for yourself. Now, on the bar exam, you can't set a timer, but for practice purposes, to habituate yourself to getting it done, you can set 2 45-minute timers. On the bar exam in California, you're given the full 90 minutes, and you have to do the whole task. And in states where you have 2 tasks, like the MPT tasks that are used in all the uniform bar exam states, you get 3 hours, and you're responsible for subdividing your own time. Now they stick big old honking clocks all over the room for the bar exam because they don't allow you to bring any electronic devices. And some states allow like analog watches. You can look at your state's rules. The states vary in what they allow you to bring in. I remember going to Illinois, we had these 2-gallon Ziploc bags. I had to find those 2-gallon Ziploc bags. And then you put your laptop in there. Like it had to be in a clear Ziploc bag. You could have your laptop and your cord and I don't know, like 3 pencils or something. I mean, it was crazy what they allow you to bring and not bring is so specific in each state. You follow that. So if you use a watch and bring a watch and it's allowed by your state, great. But there are also big clocks everywhere you can see them. Okay. So you need to watch that clock and get in the habit. So if you have to time yourself with a, beep, beep, something that rings kind of timer, the first couple of times, great. But then start doing it that you force yourself to look at a clock. This is for my friends who have a little trouble with the timing here, okay? You do want to do, at least 1 3-hour exam. And if you have trouble with timing, maybe more than one, where you sit down and you simulate an entire exam or a 90-minute exam for California. And, but if you have to take a 3-hour exam, simulate that whole 3 hours where you just have to look at a clock and keep yourself on time. It can help. Okay, let's say, I'm so sorry. I thought that was off. Let's say that the exam, by the time they hand out all the papers and get all the instructions and all that, it starts at 9:14 in the morning. Well, you want to keep yourself on task, right? So you're going to say, how long do I have for outlining? Let's talk about the people that have 2 tasks, because some of you have 2 and some of you have 1. Let's say you have 2 tasks. All right, well, I have until, I could say 10 a.m. and give myself an extra minute, or I could say 9:59, let's say 10 a.m. I have until 10 a.m. to outline. I have until, 10:44 or 10:45 to write, right. And, you could really be specific, and then I have, you plot it out, you write at the top of your cover page, exactly how long you have, 10:45, now you have till 11:30, which is actually just 11:29, and then you have until 12:14 to finish. So you give yourself those 2 blocks. You force yourself to stay on that time. If you write those times down in the corner of the cover sheet and stick it somewhere, then you can remind yourself if you're on track. Just take the first few seconds and do that. And you can keep yourself on time that way. All right, so that's the writing. If you do have time at the end, you can proofread. You know, if you get to where you can do these in 40 minutes, or 40, 45, then you get that 5 or 10 minutes left at the end to proofread, to make sure that what you've read is in English and makes sense. That's always good. If you have time, then do that. Everyone makes little typing errors, reversing letters, and stuff like that. If you're making grammatical errors, spelling errors, or if your typos are so numerous that it makes it hard to read your paper, that's going to be counted against you, because your writing, your ability to write, your style will count as part of this exam, because they want to see that you can produce a lawyerly piece of writing. You know, I've recommended to students both you know, native English speakers and non-native English speakers, like, hey, there's some quick grammar rules, you know, punctuation rules at the beginning of the Red Book. A Manual of Legal Style is the subtitle. The Red Book, A Manual of Legal Style, and the author is Brian Garner. If you need to brush up on your grammar, do it. You know, it's worth knowing anyway if you want to be a great lawyer. And I've had students who've found success with improving their writing with some of the suggestions in that book. Like, you want to make sure that your writing is lawyerly. But the main thing that you're judged on is your legal analysis, your application of a lot of the facts, your understanding, you know, the effect of the different facts on the case, your understanding the law. Sometimes the law is complicated. And then following directions, you know, following those directions you're given, and finishing. All right, so what if everything's off the rails and you're realizing, oh my gosh, I'm on the last task. I have only 25 minutes to write, and I got a lot to say. Write the conclusion first. Write your conclusion first. Why? Because then it'll look like you finished whether you did or not, and then just go to town and write what you can. Do, you know, the most significant, important chunk for each section, okay? I have a ton of Q&A, so I'm gonna do my best to try to answer it now. Again, there are samples available online, or you can get them all nice in a package with BarMax and also access to office hours. So let me go back and see. I can't answer about trying to pay for the New York bar exam. Sometimes I have difficulty understanding the case. So yeah, Cassandra, we've talked about just practicing, and make sure that you might want to do more in this phase of, wait, hang on. So I'm going to erase all my scribble scrabble. Okay. So if these are conceptually hard for you, like I am just having trouble understanding what the heck is going on in these, then take more time on the get familiars phase. And that was where I tell you to look at memos and briefs, you know, read, outline, you know, stick with the basic tasks first, memos and briefs, and then review the point sheet and samples. Okay, because this helps you see the kind of analysis they're looking for. Here's another overall tip. It is May the 7th. Bar exam is at least a couple months away for everybody, and many months away for some of you. This is a great time to work on your performance tests. Why? It's a skill. It's a skill, and when you've learned a skill, it's like riding a bike. You know, with this skill, you might want to practice to keep it up, to stay in shape on that bike, as it were. But it's not something you forget. Whereas if you try to cram, you know, I don't know, some important rules like the ways that easements are created, yeah, that's an important rule on the bar exam. But if you try to put them all in your head right now and all the elements of each, you'll forget it even by the end of July. It's okay, you're human, right? You're going to want to focus on all that cramming law and getting the elements and the elements of the exceptions to, you know, the rules that are most commonly tested, you know, your hearsay exceptions. You want to be working on all those in July, right? You want to do this now so that you have, you know, this part of the exam pretty much under your belt and you just brush up as you go along, stay in shape. Okay, Ken, I think I've given the best. Oh, whoops. So Jay, should you start with, you have asked me to write and then write your instructions followed by facts, issue, short answers, discussion. You should go issue by issue. I think I showed that in the outline. And you can say, you know, you have asked me to write, but don't make it a long paragraph. Make it, attached to, you know, or you can have you have asked me to write paragraph. You can look at some of the New York samples. Some of them do and some of them don't. In terms of, you know, throwing that little throat clearing at the top. My concern is that people waste too much time on it, right? On the throat clearing. And that's not where the points are. You know, you can just say, you know, below is my memo regarding the SOPR matter. And it's not beautiful, but as long as the rest of your analysis is filled in, I'd rather have that part too short and the rest complete, right? So my only hesitation about what I call throat clearing, or that little introduction to a memo up at the front, is that it might take away time from the other parts, but it's good to include it. You know, you asked me to, you know, analyze, you know, whether, you know, our client, blah, 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 has a good claim for yada, yada, you know, and then just launch into your discussion. Identify each issue and then discuss it and come to a conclusion issue by issue. I answered this one. I answered this one. And I answered this one. Oh, yay. Sample point sheets are available online. I don't think we're going to get to be putting one up right now. Because I'd have to go into a file and pull one up. Practice tests and CBE. Can you get a high score and be a slow typer? Yes, just be succinct. Let's see. Done. So the relevant cases and rules, Evelyn, I think I answered this as I went along, but yes, it's in that thing called the library. So after you read the task memo, you're going to jump there, and that's where your relevant cases and rules are. I think I answered that. Just want to make sure you understood, though. Okay, someone says there is no scratch paper and that you need to type. Well, if you have to type, then type. I thought there was scratch paper. So facts that apply in 2 or 3 issues. Man, Patty, I can think of one where it was this multi-factor test and you literally had to apply every factor. You know, like best interest of the child is usually a multi-factor test and they want you to apply every factor. It was something like that, but it wasn't that. It was, maybe it was like whether somebody is an employee or a subcontractor or whether somebody fit this tax category. Oh, it was a tax thing. Whether somebody fit this tax category or that tax category. And it was one of those balancing tests where you weigh a series of factors, and there were literally factors like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You had to go factor by factor, or it was just not going to be well organized at all. There had to be an A and a B and a C and a D. And some of them were very short, and yes, some facts applied to more than one. So then you spend more time discussing it, you know, where it applies more, and you might mention it in the other ones too. You know, it's tough. So yes, sometimes one fact will apply to multiple issues or multiple factors. Whereas some facts are very specific to particular issues or factors. It was like, gosh, in that one there was like, you know, was the TV in the used for personal use, or, you know, and that went to one particular thing. It was crazy. Anyway, that was the Christmas tree farm one. You can go find it. So I finished that. Yeah, so Risarta, I hope I answered your question. That outline, I just mean a skeleton. Like, I like that word you used, skeleton. You receive a hard copy of the performance test package and a hard copy of your MEE essays. When you're taking a live bar exam, that's all those hard copies are going to come on paper and not through ExamSoft. I don't know how they're going to do it if it's an online exam. Does ExamSoft have spell check? I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. Sorry. Maybe somebody in chat remembers. Personal planning. Yeah, don't submit that outline, Emma. Okay, what sources other than practice tests? Man, I'm going to go get that book I just mentioned. No, I can't reach it. It's out of reach. Darn it. So Anonymous, who wants to know about samples, the same book that I recommended for grammar actually does have samples of different types of legal writing. The red book, the grammar is at the beginning, like how to use the punctuation and stuff. But then it's called the Red Book, A Manual for Legal Style. And the chapters toward the end, A Manual of Legal Style. And believe it or not, it's red. And you can go buy it on Amazon or wherever you get books. The Red Book, A Manual of Legal Style. Brian, I think it's with a Y, Garner, definitely Garner, Garner. He's also been the editor of Black's Law Dictionary for the last however many years. Oh, then I have his name. Oh no. Well, he says Garner. Anyway, I'm getting a little punchy. So the Red Book has samples at the end of models of different kinds of legal documents, keeping in mind that for the performance test, whether the MPT or the California performance test, you'll be doing a simplified, brief version of it, not a nice one that you would do for practice, but at least you get a general idea of what some of these things might look like in this book. So I do recommend it for foreign practitioners coming to the US, and I recommend it for people working on their grammar, and he should really give me some royalties for that. Let's see. We already answered, you do get a hard copy of the file, and okay, I did get through the tips. I got through like how to go through it. Somebody was concerned I was answering a lot of questions. It's a balance. It's a balance. And I did do 2 office hours about it for the BarMax students. Should you actually type out all the statutes and regulations? Okay, Atiba, that's a good one. Let's say you have a statute and it's got like 70 words, right? Too many words. But the key language that maybe it's cited in the case law or it applies here is just a few words, then you'll just quote those few words. Or maybe it's, X happens if, A or B or C. Let's say this is the statute and it's an or, okay? It is perfectly fine for you to quote just this because this is the part that's relevant to your case. So you're going to put a ... to show that you're eliminating something in the middle. You'll put a little ... but then you quote the part that's relevant to your case. So yes, you want to quote the language of statutes where it's relevant, but you only want to quote the part that's relevant. And same for quoting case law. Don't go copying long paragraphs from cases, just the key words of a legal test. Yes, I hope that helps. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then there's a whole page of statutes and regulations. Yeah, there's usually only one that you have to actually quote, or it's just a few words from two of them, maybe. Is it an obligation to state cases by name? Okay, so when I talk about stating cases, this is good. I'm only talking about the cases that are in the file or in the library that you're given. So the cases will be on the piece of paper that is handed to you at the exam, okay? And those cases, you do want to cite only those cases. You don't have to cite any other case, and in fact, you should not. When you're taking the California bar exam and they give you a performance test, or you're taking a bar exam with a multi-state performance test, they give you this packet, and this contains the universe of the law you need to know. Now, you do need to know how the court system works, how to cite precedent, like that, you know, if a court has, you know, a later case, it might have limited or overturned an earlier one. Like, you need to have that kind of analysis to read the cases and understand how they relate to each other. But you don't need to know any cases other than those that you're given in the packet, and you shouldn't discuss any cases other than those in the packet. Are you allowed to bring in a watch to time yourself? As I mentioned, it really varies state to state what you're allowed to bring. So the person asked is a body that administers the bar exam for your state. So the New York Board of Law Examiners, or the Massachusetts BBO, or whatever it is. Okay. You can set the timing alarm in ExamSoft. I had no idea. Everybody, Rima is our hero. You can set a timing alarm in ExamSoft. If you can, then do it. Wow, then you have a little thing on your screen that tells you. Then you don't have to do all what I did. Thank you. See, I learned stuff. Thank you. Are the questions in printed form? Can you write on the questions? Yes and yes. There's no way to practice something just like ExamSoft, I don't think. You could check online. I don't know that there's something like that. You'd maybe Google it and see if there's like ExamSoft, you know, mock ExamSoft or practice ExamSoft software. I don't know. That would be a good thing to do, to kind of know what you can and can't do. April, I could see where that would come in handy. So check and see. I don't know. People that are practicing their essays are just doing it in Word or in Google Docs. So Exemplify. Oh, so some places use ExamSoft, which is what I'm used to, and some use Exemplify. And Exemplify does have an alarm clock feature. So check with your jurisdiction which program they use, and check you know, if there's an available mock-up online. Renee, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. Let's see, because I don't have them handy right now. Are we able to get the February 2020 California performance test? I don't think it's released yet. Let's put it this way. I haven't seen it yet, and the results don't come out till next week. So it'll be some point after the results that they'll release that. So yeah, don't have it yet, but soon we will get it. And we will analyze it. We get scratch paper. When two distinguishing cases are given, how do you write that in your briefs? You can say, the court distinguished blah, blah, because fact, 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 you know, and therefore the rule didn't apply. That's how you can just say it outright, you know, court distinguished, or this case can be distinguished from, you know, that's all, just like you said it in your question. Point sheets are available in NCBE, right, on the NCBE website. And then model answers are available from California. And then from some of the UBE states, that the MPT states like New York and Minnesota, and BarMax. So let me see. Why do most law schools recommend Barbie? Because they've been around a long time, and they had a virtual monopoly for so long, and people are afraid to try anything new, except for the tens of thousands who've tried BarMax and have been really happy with it. We have, you know, a 5-star app in the App Store, and we have, as you can, you know, see from the sample, like, you know, you can download a little sample of our app, and you can, you know, read reviews. You see this, what we offer. I do, you know, some of the office hours, you know, we have a lot of happy customers. So yeah, why Barbary? I don't know. I don't know. It's just been around a long time. It costs, what, 2-3 times as much as we do. I can't even keep track. It gives you a mountain of books to overwhelm you instead of just the stuff you need to know for the exam. It writes a lot of fake questions instead of using real questions. I don't know. I didn't come here to slam Barbary. I'm just saying, like, you know, some people have found success with us even despite the factor that you just mentioned. So, you know, hopefully you can go tell your law school to recommend us after you pass the bar using BarMax. Then you go back and you say, guys, tell people to use BarMax. It's all online. It's totally accessible as long as they need it. And hello, it costs less and it's better. So, you know, you tell them why it's better. You don't have to tell me to tell them why it's better. You go do that, please. Go tell your law school. When is it appropriate to apply general legal principles? Yeah, Sonia, I just think you should look at some example answers, and you'll see, like, of the ones that you outline yourself, because you'll see that really the way they put it, everything you need is on the exam, is in the packet. Like, for example, it was a motion for summary judgment. And it said, you know, in Franklin, you know, a proponent is entitled to summary judgment if there is no dispute of material fact, and, you know, and the proponent is entitled to judgment as a matter of law. You know, a court will grant a summary judgment if there's no dispute of material fact and the proponent is entitled to judgment as a matter of law. Why do I rattle that off? Because it's also the federal standard. But they gave you a Franklin case that stated that standard. So when you cite that generally applicable principle of law, what are you going to cite? A federal? No. You're in Franklin court. Franklin, the imaginary state of Franklin, or the imaginary state of Columbia if you're in California. No, you're going to cite the case they give you. You're going to say, over here in the Westchester case. Okay, you see what I mean? So they'll give you even those generally applicable principles of law. In a case within a case, which one's the precedent? Okay, the case you're reading, the opinion that you're reading is let's call it your main case. The precedent is anything that case cites. A precedent is something cited by another court, you know, as part of its analysis. So the one inside is the precedent. Case within a case analysis. I don't think I can do too much more detail, but let me see. Exemplify. Is ExamSoft? Oh, it's all the same thing. My goodness, you guys are making my head hurt. You can tell that I'm content and not tech, right? Sometimes it leaks out. You read Barbary for filth? LOL? Is there filth? I didn't get that far. I'm not familiar with that part of Barbary. Anyway, just get BarMax, people. Look, you know, look, we have tutoring, we have programs, you know. Anyway, depending on the language and order. Okay, so Yuki is trying to help answer, but I think we got it. I think we got it. We are crowdsourcing answers. You guys go crowdsource stuff in chat. You're like, woo. I got to thank you. You're welcome, Maria. And don't put your real name in the answer. Okay, I'm going to tell a funny thing about that. I was like downloading some samples from the Minnesota Bar website, some sample answers. I saw a name. Let's say it was, you know, Brandon White, right? It wasn't, whatever it was. It was some dude's name in the from line of the memo that they posted as the model on their site. And I'm like, did he really do that? So I Googled the dude. It was uncommon enough name that I could go, you know, Brandon White, lawyer, Minnesota. And sure enough, wonder if he knows that his answer is the model on the, obviously the bar didn't notice that when they posted it, but don't be Brandon White. Okay, his name wasn't Brandon White. I'm just making that up. Sorry, Brandon's out there. Yeah, don't use your name. You're examinee. Okay, your name is examinee. Case within a case analysis. All right, so if I have a minute, oh, I really don't. I'm sorry, Evelyn. We also do tutoring. We do tutoring whether or not you're a BarMax student. We offer tutoring. I have worked with both BarMax and non-BarMax people, although I find it helpful when my students have access to the BarMax outlines. I've been able to provide a little assistance to people who are using different outlines. When they just wanted tutoring, some people just want to help with their writing for the MEE, for example, so we worked on that. Software has spell check and find, copy, cut, and paste, copy and paste shorthands. All right, so Rasarta has this knowledge. Let's see. Do graders actually read through the answers? Do they look for keywords, general structure, and outline of the answer? Sunny, deep mysteries of the universe, right? Let's put it this way. They have very little time. These are not full-time graders. These are practicing attorneys who, if you've met one, these are busy people. These are practicing attorneys who, in service to their bar, take this little part-time job on the side, okay? I had a colleague who did Texas essays. She graded Texas essays, and she had this big stack on her desk. Did she have meetings? Yes. Did she have documents she needed to review? Yes. Did she have phone calls that needed to be made? Yes. Closings? Yes. She also had this stack on her desk. So I don't know how much time she spent on each one, but our goal is for you to make it as clear and easy for them to read as possible so that they can just give you the points, even if it's the last one out of 29 that they're trying to finish before lunch. Okay, so that's my answer there, Sunny. Bobby's back. Bobby, good for you. I'm sorry, Bobby focused on Iraq, and I think focusing on Iraq is the way to go. What's the difference between MEE grading and MEE tutoring? Normally, we just recommend that you submit stuff for grading. And in fact, if you are not a BarMax student, I think you can still, can you purchase grading? I think you can. Is that right? I should be making sure I get all this right in chat. Yeah, you can purchase grading. So that's good for getting comments. This particular person like needed help with some of the subjects, wanted some more help on understanding civil procedure, wanted some more help on understanding secure transactions and things like that. So we spent a little extra time and then also some MBE help. Tutors can review essays for you, but it's not the best use of their time because, you know, your tutoring time costs more than essay reviews. So you don't want to use your tutoring time just reviewing essays. But, you know, I remember helping that person with that and, you know, and some MBE topics as well. Just, it was more just like understanding laws. Okay. Oh boy. So I think that is about all that I can answer for today. We're coming up on 4 o'clock and I've gotten almost everything, and I wish I could get into greater detail, but I will do so in future presentations, most likely in office hours that will be available live and for replay within BarMax for our BarMax students. Again, you just need to do this. I wish you all the best. Happy studying and stay safe.